It's not every day that a Middle Eastern dad sits his teenage daughter down and says, we're gonna watch Eyes Wide Shut together. But that's exactly how it went down. My dad's a major cinephile, and we've gone through a catalog of independent cinema and foreign films together. So it's just a matter of time before we did our Kubrick tour. We've done Eyes Wide Shut, Space Odyssey 2001, A Clockwork Orange, and I think Barry Lyndon together. So as a teenage girl watching this movie, I was very scared. I was very scared, and it's still a visually scary movie, especially with that music. Like, from what I learned later on, it was designed to be that way, to like evoke the sense of anxiety in us about what's going to happen next. But my dad's watching it and he's like, oh, look at Kubrick's such a genius, and look at how he's telling the story of capitalist corruption and power dynamics, and like how disposable people are, human resources, and look at how they became part of the elite at the end. And I'm like, Bubba, I have no idea what you're talking about. I am scared. And why am I watching this movie? Fast forward to today. It's been 26 years since the movie came out. I'm a 44-year-old woman. I'm not a teenager anymore. I've been married. I've been divorced. I've had kids. I've had sexually liberating experiences of my own that I document right here on my YouTube channel. So for some reason, the movie came back on my radar and I decided to watch it again. Very recently, I think maybe because it's filmed during Christmas, and it's Christmas season now. Today's the 22nd of December. So I watched it again, and I watched it with a more mature, experienced lens. And I came to realize that this is very much a feminist movie. It is not a happily ever after movie. This isn't the movie where the girl gets the ring at the end, or the guy it's not like that at all. This is not Sex and the City feminism. This is not The Devil Wears Prada feminism, right? This is real. This is real life. And it's so real that Alice, at the end of the movie, the very controversial toy store scene, she makes this micro movement. And that was what cracked open the whole mystery of the movie to me. At the end of the movie, their father and mother and child are walking through a toy store, and the child is picking up toys and saying, I want this, and what about this? And then Helena, the daughter, picks up this teddy bear, this big like teddy bear. And she says to her mom, I want this. And Alice looks at it, flips over a tag to check the price of the toy, puts it back and says, we'll see. It's very easy to overlook the significance of this micro movement. But checking the price of something before you buy it is something that 99.99999% of the planet has to do. We don't have a choice. We very few people in the world can go to a store and buy something without checking the price. Alice checks the price. Up until that point, I had seen her as like the statuesque, beautiful, ornamental wife of a prominent doctor, and they live in a beautiful apartment, and she's glamorous and he's handsome, and people are fawning over them, and they've got it made. But then that movement made me see her in a different light. She's just like everybody else. Living in that state of having to check the price of things before we buy them creates like an anxiety, especially when you have children. There's an anxiety that pervades your life. And I saw her as that woman suddenly, not just as like a lusty, lustful woman, but as a woman who lives in that state of anxiety. And it got me thinking, and that's like in the final scene of the movie. So I rewatched the movie again and again under this new lens, with this new perspective. And Alice's story kind of unraveled itself to me. And I was like, fuck, I finally get it. I finally get it. I see what my dad was talking about. And we see Alice evolve from domestic goddess who runs the house and she's home all day and she snacks on Snackwells and she watches TV and she smokes cigarettes to becoming this predator, like a sexual, capitalistic predator. And her story is what drives the movie. The movie is about her. This movie is 100% about Alice. And what's funny is that we don't see her really do much. Like I said, she's a domestic goddess. She's home most of the time. We don't see her out in the streets of New York City like we do Bill. We don't see her interacting with that many people. She interacts with her child, she interacts with the babysitter, she interacts with her husband, and she interacts with 1 or 2, 3 people at the party. That's it. Bill absolutely interacts with like the majority, if not all of the additional characters in the movie. Alice doesn't do much. But it's Alice's words. It's how Alice expresses her inner life, her thoughts, her desires, her dreams that narrate the whole movie and set into action what transpires and what we see. And so I'm going to analyze the movie from that perspective. And I'll start with Alice because she's the main character and the movie is told through her desires. And in the second part, I'll discuss Bill. And in the third part, I'll discuss the people that these two interact with in the movie. And they are representative of a social hierarchy, a social ladder. From the very bottom, we start with, everybody thinks it starts at the bottom with Domino. It starts at the bottom with the group of boys that accost Bill on the street and works its way up to the very top, to Ziegler, and then people we don't get to see. So with Alice, her story, the story begins. The story really begins. We see the first scene as them getting ready for the party. But the course of action has already been kicked off by Alice's confession. She confesses that when she went on vacation with her husband and daughter to Cape Cod, I believe, she saw a man who ignited in her a sexual passion that she couldn't ignore. That's where Alice's story begins. Before that, she was a wife and mother, and she was content to be that person. Then she sees someone who inspires a whole new dimension of her. And although she doesn't act on that desire, it cannot be ignored. It's become a part of her. And from there on, we see how this side of her consumes her, how it becomes who she really is. She's become sexually awakened, and then we see her getting ready for this party. And they go to the party, and she's basically at this point Bill's ornament. She's an ornament to his life. She's his beautiful wife, and he's the doctor, and she's his wife and the mother to his kids, and so on and so forth. And when they get to the party, Ziegler says, "Oh, you look so beautiful," and he says, "I don't say that to everybody," and his wife is like, "Yes, you do." Alice is very in the background. She's interchangeable. Then they get to the party, and Alice wants to break away from Bill. She wants to spend some time alone. So she says, "I'm going to go to the bathroom." She doesn't want to go to the bathroom. She just wants to be alone for a little bit. And Kubrick shows us that she's lying by showing her grab a flute of champagne and chugging it when she walks away from Bill. Nobody who has to go to the bathroom chugs anything when they gotta go. They go straight to the bathroom. She chugs a glass of champagne, so we know she's lying. She goes about her plan to go and hang out by the bar and stand there by herself and see what happens. I've done that. There's very few women who have the guts to go out alone, but the ones who do will report back saying, I had the best time. I've reported on going out alone, and I come back saying I've had the best time. That's what a lot of my content is made up of. I'm a Iranian single woman in her mid-40s. I've been divorced, and I am not looking to jump into another relationship. I am very much in Alice's mindset right now of going out there and seeing what kind of opportunities and adventures I can get myself into. She gets approached by the Hungarian. The Hungarian is a very underrated character in this movie, and their scene together is extremely underrated because this interaction between Alice and the Hungarian is what sets off the course of action for Bill throughout the rest of the movie. The Hungarian asks Alice to dance, and he says, what do you do for a living? She says, I'm looking for a job. This is how she signals that she's open for offers. She's saying, make me an offer. I'm looking for work. I'm looking for money. Make me an offer. What do you have to offer me? And the Hungarian is smart. He picks up on it right away. He knows what's going on there. And their scene and their little back and forth and their little dance and their dialogue is just cinema genius. It's incredible what goes on between the two of them and what they're saying and what they really mean. The Hungarian in this hierarchy serves as a gatekeeper. He says to her, oh, I can get you a job in the art world. I have friends there. And she's like, She wants more. She wants to see what more he can do for her. So then he says to her, there's a collection of Renaissance bronzes upstairs. Let's go take a look. He wants to get her into one of the private rooms. He's inviting her to one of those private areas that we don't get to go to in the whole entire movie. Spoiler alert. But he invites her. And at the same time, she sees Bill flirting with those two women. And instead of getting jealous or angry or upset with the women or with Bill, you can see in her face, she gets excited. She's amused, she's excited. So both Bill and Alice have been invited into private rooms by gatekeepers at the party. Bill by the two women and Alice by the Hungarian. Alice says, not just yet, not now, not right now. She's playing the game. She wants to continue to leverage her power to see what she can get. And she says, I'm married. I have a husband. So she's explaining that she wants to go, but she has a husband, and she's gonna wait and see what transpires with Bill and those two women. Because in the next scene, she asks him, did you go upstairs with those two women? Did you happen to fuck those two women? She wanted him to go up there. Because if we're looking at the people that they interact with as rungs on a social ladder, those two women are rungs that Bill can step up on to go higher up on the social ladder. He doesn't take the opportunity. He gets summoned away by a messenger to go tend to something that's going on with Ziegler, and he misses that opportunity. And that's when Alice tells Bill her fantasy, what happened at Cape Cod. Bill spirals and he leaves. But we see Alice, it was just a conversation. She didn't say she did anything. This is just a conversation of what's going on inside her, what's in her mind, what's in her thoughts. And then Bill leaves, and when he comes back after having gone to that party, she's asleep and she's giggling in her dream, and he wakes her up and he says, you sound like you were having a nightmare. She didn't sound like she was having a nightmare. She sounded like she was having a wonderful dream. But he woke her up out of it. He didn't want, after the night he had and how scared he was, he didn't want her having a nice dream. He woke her up. And she wakes up and he's there looking miserable and it's cold in the room. And she's like, oh, I had this terrible dream. She lies to him a lot. She lies to him a lot to make him feel better. She doesn't say in the beginning of the movie, I'm going to go leave and flirt with other men. She says, I'm going to the bathroom. She's having this wonderful dream, and she tells the story of how wonderful this dream was, but she says to him, oh, it was a horrible dream. She lies to him constantly to make him feel better. And she tells him, she recounts the story of Adam and Eve, kind of, in her dream. Oh, we were together out in the middle of nowhere, and we were naked, and I was ashamed. And that's the story of Adam and Eve, right? And their separation from God, how they were one with God and they felt safe and warm. And then suddenly something happened and they were cast away from God. And now suddenly they were vulnerable and naked, vulnerable. And they felt, and Eve and Adam were ashamed. And Alice expresses being ashamed. But she says, but then you left. You left to go get us clothes. And suddenly I felt amazing. She says, suddenly I felt wonderful. And she was no longer ashamed. She was shameless. She was shameless. And with this shamelessness, she was able to indulge in her desires. And she went out into the world and she interacted with a lot of people and a lot of men. And she fucked them all. She didn't fuck them all. This movie, there's a saying that goes, everything in life is about sex except for sex. Sex is about power. Her saying that she fucked all those men doesn't have as much to do with her having sexual relations with those men as her going out into the world and enjoying the power that her new independence gives her. And she's rewarded. She feels shameless. She feels wonderful. She feels like there's opportunity and after opportunity and after opportunity and after opportunity available to her, with him not in the picture. So at first she was telling the Hungarian, I'm married, not yet. And at this point it's seeping into her subconscious that if she is minus Bill, she will get to explore these different opportunities. She can become the woman who doesn't have to check the price of things before she buys them. She can move up on that rung on her own without Bill. And this is a concept, this whole concept of her leveraging her sexual desirability to gain more economic opportunity is not a foreign concept. We watch a lot of TV shows in American media about women, like, for example, Sex and the City. And these women are economically independent, they have successful careers, and then they have sex with lots of men. In the hopes of finding a connection with someone so that they can share the rest of their lives with them. What Kubrick tells us in Eyes Wide Shut is that in the real world, sex is not used just to have sex for the sake of it. Sex is a tool for gaining power, for leveraging opportunities. And there is a book called Erotic Capital that was published in 2011. I have a first edition. And this was written by Dr. Catherine Hakim, who is a sociologist and professor at the London School of Economics. And she spent a lot of time in corporate offices. And she dedicated a good portion of her studies and her mental acumen on publishing papers and this book on the concept of erotic capital. And this is her observations of people leveraging other people's sexual interest in them for economic opportunities, for economic advancement, for to rise up the social ladder, to rise up the corporate ladder. She observed it, she documented it, she doesn't judge it, she advocates for it. If you're going to go to school and get an education so that you can increase your opportunities, or you're going to go out and make it a point to network so that you can increase your opportunities, then why not use your sexual desirability to increase your opportunities? That's what this whole book is about. She says it's just as incumbent upon people who have that ability to use it to their advantage. We don't see women typically in media doing that. In American culture, we call them gold diggers, and that's a derogatory term. Or, you know, women who do directly capitalize on their sexual desirability in a transactional way, be it, you know, escorts, sex workers, pornographic actresses, models. We as a society, we kind of look down on it, right? We kind of look down on that because it's too transactional. We're not okay with people being so blatantly transactional about it. But Catherine is saying that that's an ideal path for somebody to take, because the earnings, she says here, let me put it, I don't want to I'll put it in her words. She says, as some economists recognize, the puzzle is not why intelligent and attractive women become prostitutes, but rather why more women do not choose this occupation. Given the high earning potential for relatively short work hours, social scientists regularly bump their noses up against this question and regularly walk away from it. The social stigma attached to prostitution is so powerful that even academics are afraid of being tainted by any serious interest in explaining sexual economics in any guise at all. So this concept is nothing new, and Kubrick bestows upon Alice this ability to exploit other people's sexual interest in her for her economic gain, because she doesn't want to keep checking the price of toys for her kids when she's in a position to reach those top rungs. The one scene that always puzzled me in the movie was the following scene. When after Bill leaves, she confesses her dream. He leaves again. He retraces his steps from the night before, and then he comes home. And he sees the mask on the bed, and he's like, I have to come clean. You know, he has to face himself. He has to shed his mask. And he confesses to Alice everything. We see Alice, and she's upset. She's visibly upset. We can see that she's been crying and she's smoking a cigarette. She doesn't say anything in reference to their conversation. She just says, you know, we promised our daughter that we would go Christmas shopping. And in the next scene, we see them at the toy store. And I couldn't quite figure it out. I was like, why is she crying? It took me a while to figure out why she was crying. Because technically, Bill didn't do anything wrong. Bill billed throughout those 2 nights. Bill was Bill. Bill was very predictable Bill. Bill did not follow through on having sex with Marianne. He did not follow through on having sex with Domino. He did not go up into the private rooms that he was invited to at the orgy. He was Bill. He was predictable, standard Bill. So I'm thinking to myself, like, why is she crying? Why is she upset? And then you can see in the next scene, in the final scene at the toy store, the interaction between Alice and Bill. And this time, we see her actively avoiding Bill. Like he's walking around like this. He keeps looking over at her, and she's focused on the kid. She's focused on the toys. She doesn't want to look at him. She avoids making eye contact with him. And then finally they make eye contact, and you can see her like, oh, like you can see her get like, oh, and she like walks a few steps ahead of him to try to avoid him. Then she's like, okay, we gotta have this conversation, because he asks her like, what are we gonna do now? And she kind of like reluctantly is like, okay, fine, let's talk about this. We gotta talk about this. So we see in this scene a different Alice. We see an Alice that's over it. We see an Alice that's fed up. We see an Alice that's like exasperated and done. This is like the weakest, most tired we've seen her. And again, she lies to him. Again, she lies to him. She says, we should be grateful. We should be grateful. This is that you should be grateful is what we tell people when they ask us for things and we feel like they don't deserve it, or we feel like they have enough and they shouldn't ask for more. You should be grateful for what you've got. She says we should be grateful that we've made it this far. We should be grateful that we've made it this far. And I mean, like, that's my interpretation of her tone. And she says, she says, I do love you, and I believe she's telling the truth when she says that. I do love you. And he says, well, what about forever? Forever? Like, she says something and he's like, forever? And it's like he's asking for a renewal of their vows, right? Like, he's trying to get her to recommit to him when he says forever. Like, he's trying to get her to say, like, okay, fine, like, let's try this again. And she says, her face when she says forever, she's like, no, I don't want to say forever. That word scares me, she says. She doesn't want to recommit to being Bill's ornament in life, because that's what makes him feel better, is her as his ornament. Every time she fulfilled her role as a domestic goddess, he was okay. But when she talked about sexual agency or fucking other men, he flipped out. So she knows what will make him happy. And she says in like a very like political way, I do love you. You should be grateful, but we're not going to talk about forever. Basically, she's saying, I'm done. I'm done being your ornament. And she says, there is something very important that we got to do as soon as possible. And he says, what? And she says, fuck. And a lot of people think that this fuck is her wanting to reconcile the relationship, or her wanting to go back to the way they were, or rekindle their romance, or get their relationship back on track. I don't see it that way at all. When she says fuck, she's saying that she's done doing things his way. She's done waiting for him to take the lead. She's done being a domestic goddess. And they are going to fuck. Like I said, this sex is, everything in life is about sex except for sex. Sex is about power. She's going to fuck. She's going to use any tool at her disposal to gain power, to leverage their positioning, their status in life, to get to the next level, because he couldn't cut it. He couldn't do it. And that's why she's crying in the previous scene, because after his confession to her, she realizes this guy can't do it on his own. He cannot get us into the private rooms. Every single time he had an opportunity to use people to get himself up on the ladder, to go to the private rooms where the elite of the elite, people above Ziegler are, and gain access to those spaces, he said no. He said no. And she's realizing after hearing his story that's it. He's reached the end of his rope. Like he's not going to make it any further unless she takes control. Because when she gets invited to those rooms, she gets invited to those rooms. And we see throughout the movie that she's getting closer and closer and closer to the conclusion that they are never going to get into those rooms with him. She's only going to get to go into those rooms when she's approached on her own. And she wants that. She wants that. She's not going to hang behind and play mommy and wife to him anymore. When they're at the toy store, Helena goes up to a push pram, and says, look, mommy, I can put my little toy in it. And Alice says, that's old-fashioned. That's old-fashioned. She's telling her daughter, she's expressing to us and telling her daughter, this role of mother pushing a pram is old-fashioned. She's outgrown it. She's not going to do it anymore. She's done. And when her husband asks her, what about forever? Are we going to be together forever? She says, let's not talk about forever. She's done. She's outgrown those roles. She wants what's next. She wants what's next. And by saying fuck, she's saying, I'm going to now use you as a stepping stone to getting to that next level. Because in the conversation she has with the Hungarian says to her, do you know why women used to get married in the past? She says, why? He says, so that they could lose their virginity and then go after what they truly desire. In the past, women used marriage as a stepping stone. So now she's going to, that's why I say that conversation between her and the Hungarian, that whole scene is extremely underrated. She's going to use Bill as a stepping stone to getting to that next level. And that's why my dad said, look, they became part of the elite. They became part of that orgy, the people at the orgy. Not because Bill got him in, but because Alice is going to get them in. And the reason why a lot of people say, oh, Helena was taken at the end and they sacrificed her and all that stuff. The scene focuses on Alice. From beginning to end, the movie is about Alice. Alice said, in order to get what I desire, I was willing to give up my husband and my child. She was willing to let go of her role as mother and her role as wife in order to get what she truly desires. And what 99.999% of us desire is to not have to check the prices of things before we buy them. We all want to be there. We all want to be on that level where we can have what we want without that anxiety in our lives. Okay, fine. There are some people who are perfectly happy just being a mom, and there are some people who are perfectly happy just being a wife. Sure. That's not really the truth. We all know. That's not the truth. That's not true. That's not true. And so to the end, we see Alice say, we're going to fuck. They're gonna do things her way now. They're gonna do things her way now. She's in charge. She's the lead in the family. And we don't hear Bill argue back. He knows he cannot cut it out there on his own. When we see, okay, so Kubrick is not being, I don't think Kubrick is judging any of this. He's not judging any of this. This is just simply an artist and a genius storyteller who is showing us in a beautiful, visually stunning and shocking way the ladder of capitalism what it takes to get to the top, and what women truly desire. Our bodies are designed to have children, yes. But women throughout history have always desired economic independence, always. And seeing Alice express it in such a way, it sounds so violent, like we're gonna fuck. But, and that's why I call her apex predator, because it sounds so violent. It's not a soft fuck at all. It's a very hard, like, fuck. Is just Kubrick telling another story like the apes at the beginning of Space Odyssey 2001. Like, this is human nature. This is just human nature. And it's just so beautifully portrayed. I'll get into my analysis of Bill and how he kind of represents like the manosphere that exists today, how he cannot handle seeing his wife have sexual agency. And then we'll get into all the people who represent the rungs of society, from the very bottom, the boys on the street, to the next, to the next, to the next, to the top. The most important people in that, on those rungs, are the Hungarian, Nick, and Milic. It's a fantastic movie. It's a fantastic movie. I think I've presented my points properly, and I hope that I've articulated her trajectory and how there's nothing to judge about this. Kubrick is not judging her for this. He is simply expressing that if given the chance, she will take it at the cost of, but there's always a price to pay. I do want to mention one more thing. In the toy store, Alice and Bill end up looking at each other face to face, and behind Alice are these stuffed tigers. And we see the same stuffed tiger at Domino's apartment. So it made me wonder, if Alice is gonna go down this trajectory of trying to gain power, is she gonna start where Domino is starting? Like, how is she gonna do this? Like, where does she, at what rung of the ladder is she starting at? She's definitely not a Marianne, because Marianne is past her prime and Marianne is settling. Marianne's gonna marry some guy and move to the Midwest. She's definitely not a Domino, and she's definitely not a Mandy, because Alice's strength is in her being a wife and mother. That's her leverage. Married women have a lot more power and leverage in society than single women. That's a fact. Married women have their name on a marriage certificate. Mothers have their name on a birth certificate. They are traceable. They are accounted for. They don't end up like Mandy with a body unclaimed at the morgue, right? Like, they will, if something happens to them, they will be accounted for. They will have a child, asking for justice or mourning them. They will have a husband who will, vouch for them or account for them. So, and like the Hungarian said, marriage is the stepping stone for women to be able to get what they truly desire. So Alice, being as smart as she is definitely not going to start at a Domino level. She's starting at a much higher level, leveraging her status as a wife and mother to become an apex predator of capitalism. And that's what white women are. That's what white women are. And I'll talk about like the OF economy and the creator economy and how capitalism goes where the money flows in the third installment of my analysis. I hope you sat through this. I hope you enjoyed it. If you disagree, feel free to comment down below. Merry Christmas. Today's the 22nd. And I'll try to post my second analysis, my bill analysis next week. Love you all. Thank you.